Arrival at the Taran Naval Academy. Prince. San's arrival at the Taran Naval Academy was nothing short of a ceremonial event, though the grizzled atmosphere of the academy greeted him with an unexpected starkness. As he and his 11 fellow Andromedan exchange students stepped into the stark, sterile lab, they were met with a wave of disgust and unease. The lab's main specimen, an Andromedan cadaver pinned grotesquely to a white tile wall, was an unsettling sight for the newly arrived cadets. The black orbs of the Andromedan's eyes seemed vacant, devoid of life, contrasting sharply with the vivid memories of similar eyes in the cadets' homeland. Admiral Grayson Sinclair, the Academy's commandant, emerged from the shadows, his weathered face devoid of warmth. "Andromedan physiology is a required course for all first-year cadets," he announced with a gravelly voice, his words cutting through the tense silence. "The Taran fleet must be prepared to neutralize any threat to humanity, even from our so-called allies." Prince San bristled at the implied threat but held his tongue. He knew that the Andromedan Empire desperately needed this trade deal with the resource-rich Terrans. 6 months of enduring crude intimidation and primitive conditions seemed a small price to pay for securing his people's prosperity. As the days passed, San and his fellow Andromedan cadets struggled to keep pace with the relentless human instructors. The physical training was brutal, pushing them beyond their limits, while the mental conditioning tested their patience and resolve. Confrontations with their human counterparts became a daily occurrence, earning San a string of demerits and a reputation as a troublemaker. Yet, despite the hostility, one Andromedan cadet stood apart. Zara, a brilliant engineer, refused to engage in the petty rivalries that consumed the others. She spent long hours in the data labs, poring over the Academy's systems, her brow furrowed in concentration. One day, as the cadets trained in the hangar, the atmosphere shifted. A massive training fleet, far more imposing than anything San had seen in the Andromedan Royal Navy, appeared on the horizon. As the fleet powered down to dock, Lieutenant Ward, a human officer, approached San. 10,000 ships, Ward said, his eyes glinting with pride. The rapid reaction force that guards humanity's interests across the stars. And this is just a fraction of our full armada. San stared in disbelief at the towering vessels, their sleek designs bristling with weaponry. This was no mere drill. It was a display of military dominance that shattered his arrogance. Humans, he realized, were not the primitive builders he had believed them to be. They were an advanced war machine, and he was standing in the heart of their power. An unlikely alliance. The first weeks at the Taran Naval Academy were a brutal blur of physical exertion and mental strain. San and his fellow Andromedan cadets found themselves constantly at odds with their human instructors, their bodies screaming in agony as they were pushed beyond their limits. The tension between the two groups was palpable, each side unwilling to back down in the face of the other's perceived arrogance. But amidst the daily confrontations, an unexpected event began to unfold. During a particularly grueling training exercise, one of the human cadets, Hawkins, pushed San too far. The Andromedan prince, normally calm and composed, snapped. Their altercation escalated quickly, drawing the attention of the instructors and fellow cadets. In the chaos that followed, as instructors barked orders and medics rushed to tend to the injured, San locked eyes with Hawkins. For a brief moment, the anger and resentment that had built up between them dissolved, replaced by a shared understanding. Both cadets realized that their rivalry was pointless in the grand scheme of things, a distraction from the real challenges they would face together. It was in that moment that San made a decision. Ignoring the startled looks from those around him, he strode across the hangar and placed his hand on Hawkins's shoulder, an unthinkable gesture between rivals. For a long moment, Hawkins said nothing, his expression unreadable. Then, slowly, he nodded. "I'm listening," he said, his voice low and steady. San outlined his plan for a joint exercise, a test of their ability to work together despite their differences. A mixed team, comprising both Andromedans and humans, would face their greatest challenge yet. If they could succeed, it might pave the way for a new understanding between their peoples. Hawkins listened intently, his eyes never leaving Sans. When the prince finished, the human cadet was silent for a moment, weighing the risks and rewards of such an alliance. Finally, he nodded again. "Let's do it." The next morning, as the sun rose over the academy, San and Hawkins stood side by side, briefing their respective teams on the mission ahead. The tension was still there, simmering beneath the surface, but it was tempered by a newfound respect for each other's abilities. As they prepared to embark on their joint mission, San felt a flicker of hope buried beneath the fear. If he and Hawkins could forge an alliance, perhaps their people could too. The first trial final approach, the pilot's voice crackled over the intercom. "Prepare for landing." San exchanged a glance with Hawkins, who was seated across from him in the shuttle. The human's eyes were hard, but there was something else there too, a flicker of uncertainty that mirrored San's own feelings. The shuttle touched down with a muffled thud, and the cadets quickly disembarked. The harsh light of the planet's surface bathed them in an eerie glow, casting long shadows across the rocky terrain. Their target, an abandoned mining outpost 5 kilometers to the north, was visible in the distance. "We move in 2-person teams," Hawkins said, stepping forward. "Leapfrog formation. Watch for ambush points." San bristled at the human's assumption of command, but bit back a retort. This wasn't the time for petty rivalries. "Agreed," he said, his voice calm but firm. "But we should send our best climber ahead as a scout." Zara, the lithe Andromedan engineer, nodded, her scales shimmering in the harsh light. Without a word, she activated her grav boots and bounded away in long, graceful arcs, her movements almost otherworldly in their precision. The next few hours blurred into a grueling slog across the planet's treacherous terrain. They faced simulated attacks from all angles, snipers hidden in the shadowy craters, spider-like drones that erupted from the regolith, and even a nerve gas that seeped through microscopic suit punctures, leaving them gasping and disoriented. San and Hawkins clashed repeatedly over strategy. The human favored aggressive pushes, while San argued for a more cautious approach. Their bickering cost precious time and energy, and by the time they reached the mining outpost, the team was exhausted and on edge. As they breached the airlock, klaxons blared, and red emergency lights bathed the corridor in an eerie glow. "Containment breach in Sector 7, an emotionless computer voice announced. "Lethal radiation detected. All personnel evacuate immediately." "Too risky," Hawkins argued, his voice tense. "We don't know what's in there." San hesitated, weighing the options. They had come too far to turn back now, but one wrong move could be fatal. He turned to Zara, who was already scanning the area with her portable sensor array. "The radiation levels are fluctuating," she said, her voice steady. "We have a narrow window, but it's closing fast. We need to move now." Hawkins looked at San, his expression a mix of frustration and begrudging respect. "Lead the way, Your Highness," he said, stepping aside. San nodded and took the lead, his mind focused on the mission ahead. The corridor stretched out before them, its walls lined with old, decaying equipment and flickering lights. The air was thick with the smell of ozone and decay, a stark reminder of the dangers they faced. This is the continuation of the story, with each part structured to cover approximately 35 minutes of content in total, broken down into 5-minute segments within each part. The tone is engaging and simple, ensuring the audience remains captivated by the unfolding narrative. The battle within. The deeper they ventured into the mining outpost, the more oppressive the atmosphere became. The flickering lights cast eerie shadows on the walls, and the low hum of failing machinery resonated through the corridors. San led the way, his senses heightened as they navigated the narrow passageways. Zara followed closely, her portable sensor array scanning for any signs of danger. Hawkins and the rest of the team moved cautiously behind, their weapons at the ready. The tension between the Andromedan and human cadets had not entirely dissipated, but the gravity of their situation forced them to work together in uneasy cooperation. As they approached the main control room, Zara suddenly halted, her scales shifting to a deep shade of blue, a sign of caution. "There's something ahead," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the hum of machinery. "I'm picking up movement." San nodded and signaled for the team to take cover. They quickly spread out, finding concealment behind the remnants of old equipment and debris. The corridor ahead was dark, illuminated only by the faint glow of emergency lights. A moment later, a group of figures emerged from the shadows, moving with a deliberate and calculated precision. They were not the human security forces or Andromedan soldiers that San had expected, but rather a mix of both, each one heavily armed and wearing advanced combat gear. San's heart raced as he realized who they were. Rogue elements, likely mercenaries or defectors who had been hired to protect whatever secrets the outpost held. The realization that humans and Andromedans were working together for such a purpose was both shocking and disheartening. Hawkins recognized the threat as well. "We can't take them head on," he muttered, his voice tight with tension. "They're better equipped and outnumber us," San agreed. "We'll need to outmaneuver them. Zara, can you disable their communication system? If we can isolate them, we might have a chance." Zara's fingers flew over her sensor array, accessing the outpost's control systems. "I'm on it," she replied, her voice steady despite the urgency of the situation. "Give me a minute." The seconds dragged on as the rogue forces moved closer, their footsteps echoing ominously through the corridor. San could feel the tension building, the weight of the impending confrontation pressing down on them all. Finally, Zara spoke, her voice tinged with relief. "Got it. Their comms are down. They're isolated." San didn't waste any time. "We move now," he ordered, his voice low but commanding. "Take them down quietly and efficiently." The team sprang into action, their movements swift and coordinated. San led the charge, his energy staff humming with a faint glow as he approached the first rogue soldier. With a single fluid motion he struck, the staff crackling with power as it connected with the soldier's armor, sending him crumpling to the ground. Hawkins followed suit, his blaster firing with deadly precision as he took down another enemy. The rest of the team engaged as well, their training and instincts guiding them through the chaos of the battle. Despite the odds, the combined forces of the Andromedan and human cadets proved to be a formidable match for the rogue soldiers. One by one, their enemies fell, unable to call for reinforcements or retreat. The corridor was soon littered with the bodies of the fallen, the air thick with the scent of ozone and scorched metal. As the last rogue soldier collapsed, San allowed himself a brief moment of relief. But that relief was short-lived as a new threat emerged from the control room. A hulking figure clad in advanced combat armor, far more imposing than the soldiers they had just faced. The figure's helmeted head turned slowly toward San, and a deep, distorted voice echoed from within. "You think you can stop us?" the figure growled. "You're too late. The experiment is already in motion." San's eyes narrowed as he stepped forward, his energy staff held at the ready. "We'll see about that," he replied, his voice calm but resolute. The armored figure charged, and the room erupted into chaos once more. San and Hawkins fought side by side, their movements synchronized as they engaged the powerful enemy. The figure's armor was nearly impervious to their attacks, and each blow they landed seemed to do little more than slow it down. Zara worked frantically at her sensor array, searching for any weakness in the enemy's defenses. "There's an overload mechanism in the armor's power core," she called out, her voice laced with urgency. "If we can target it, we might be able to bring him down." Hawkins nodded, his eyes locked on the armored figure. "We'll need a distraction," he said, his voice strained as he dodged another powerful strike. "San, can you keep him busy?" San didn't hesitate. He launched himself at the figure, his energy staff crackling with power as he struck again and again, each blow aimed at drawing the enemy's attention away from the others. Zara continued to work, her fingers a blur as she manipulated the outpost systems. Finally, she found what she was looking for, a way to trigger the overload. "Now!" she shouted, her voice cutting through the din of battle. Hawkins fired his blaster at the exposed power core, the shot hitting its mark with pinpoint accuracy. The armored figure staggered, its movements growing sluggish as the overload began to take effect. San pressed the attack, his energy staff striking with renewed intensity as he pushed the figure back. With a final, thunderous crash, the figure collapsed, its armor cracking and sparking as it shut down. The battle was over, but the toll it had taken on the team was evident in their labored breaths and weary expressions. San stood over the fallen enemy, his chest heaving as he caught his breath. "We need to find out what they were doing here," he said, his voice firm despite his exhaustion. "Whatever it is, we can't let it continue." Zara nodded, her scales shifting to a determined shade of green. "I'll access the control room's data logs," she said, moving towards the console. "Hopefully they'll give us some answers." As Zara worked, San and Hawkins surveyed the aftermath of the battle. The corridor was eerily quiet now, the only sounds the faint hum of the machinery and the distant crackle of Zara's equipment. The reality of what they had just faced began to sink in. A rogue operation that had gone to great lengths to protect its secrets and likely had far-reaching implications for both the Andromedan Empire and Earth. After a few tense moments, Zara's voice broke the silence. "I found something," she said, her voice tinged with both relief and concern. "There's data here on an experiment, something involving dark energy manipulation. It's dangerous, to say the least." San and Hawkins exchanged a grim look. The situation was far more complex and perilous than they had initially thought. The rogue forces weren't just protecting an outpost. They were guarding a secret that could threaten the stability of the entire galaxy. Unveiling the dark experiment. The control room was bathed in the soft, pulsating light of the main console as Zara's fingers danced across the holographic interface. The data log she had accessed began to reveal the true nature of the experiment that had been conducted at the outpost. San and Hawkins stood behind her, their expressions grim as they awaited the full revelation. "This is unbelievable," Zara muttered, her voice barely above a whisper. "They've been experimenting with dark energy on a scale that's beyond anything I've ever seen. It's not just dangerous, it's catastrophic." San leaned in closer, his eyes narrowing as he studied the information displayed on the screen. "What exactly were they trying to achieve?" he asked, his tone laced with both curiosity and concern. Zara's scales shifted to a deep, contemplative blue as she continued to analyze the data. "From what I can gather, they were attempting to create a controlled dark energy singularity, a kind of artificial black hole that could be weaponized. If they succeeded, it would be capable of consuming entire star systems." Hawkins's face paled at the implications. "And they were planning to use it? On who?" "That part isn't clear," Zara replied, her voice tinged with frustration. "The logs are fragmented and there's a lot of missing information. But from what I can piece together, it looks like they were still in the testing phase. They hadn't perfected the technology yet." San's mind raced as he considered the potential consequences of such a weapon. The Andromedan Empire and Earth had always been cautious allies, but something like this could shatter any semblance of peace between them. "We need to shut this down, permanently," he said, his voice resolute. "Whatever they've created here, it can't be allowed to fall into the wrong hands." Zara nodded in agreement, her fingers continuing to work the console. "I can initiate a self-destruct sequence for the outpost," she said, "but we'll need to get clear before it goes off. The blast radius will be massive." Hawkins frowned, his mind already calculating the logistics of their escape. "We'll need to move fast. There's no telling how many more of those rogue forces are out there, and if they catch wind of what we're doing—" "They won't get the chance," San interjected, his tone firm. "We'll take them down before they even know what's happening. Zara, start the sequence. Hawkins, let's make sure our exit is secure." The team moved with practiced efficiency, each member falling into their roles as they prepared for the imminent destruction of the outpost. San and Hawkins took point, leading the way through the winding corridors, their weapons at the ready for any potential threats. Zara remained in the control room, her focus entirely on the task at hand. As the countdown began, the tension in the air was palpable. The team knew that any mistake could mean the difference between life and death, not just for them, but for the countless lives that would be at risk if the dark energy experiment ever reached completion. With only minutes remaining on the clock, Zara's voice crackled over the comms. "The sequence is locked in. We've got 3 minutes to get out of here. San and Hawkins didn't waste a second." They sprinted through the corridors, the rest of the team following close behind. The once quiet outpost was now a cacophony of alarms and automated warnings, the walls themselves seeming to tremble with the impending explosion. As they neared the exit, they encountered another group of rogue soldiers, blocking their path to the surface. Without hesitation, San and Hawkins engaged, their combined firepower overwhelming the enemy in a matter of seconds. The way was clear, but time was running out. Bursting out of the outpost and into the harsh, barren landscape of the planet's surface, the team raced towards their shuttle, which was waiting for them with engines already primed for takeoff. They barely made it aboard before the shuttle lifted off, accelerating away from the outpost at maximum speed. From the shuttle's viewport, they could see the outpost in the distance, a small speck on the planet's surface. Then, with a blinding flash, the outpost was consumed in a massive explosion, the shockwave rippling across the ground and into the sky. Zara let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. "It's done," she said, her voice a mixture of relief and exhaustion. "The outpost, the experiment, everything. It's all gone." San nodded, his expression somber as he watched the aftermath of the explosion. "We stopped them this time," he said, "but we need to find out who was behind this and make sure they can never try it again." Hawkins leaned back in his seat, his face lined with the weariness of the day's events. "We'll need to report this to both our governments," he said. "This goes beyond just the Andromedan Empire or Earth. If someone's trying to create a weapon like this, it could destabilize the entire galaxy." The shuttle continued its ascent, leaving the planet behind as they made their way back to the Taran Naval Academy. But even as they put distance between themselves and the site of the dark experiment, the weight of what they had uncovered lingered heavily on their minds. The galaxy was a vast and dangerous place, filled with secrets and threats that neither the Andromedans nor the humans fully understood. And as San and Hawkins had learned, the line between ally and enemy could be as thin as a single decision, a decision that could change the fate of entire worlds. The aftermath and the next step. The return to the Taran Naval Academy was somber and reflective. The shuttle's journey through space was quiet, each member of the team lost in their thoughts about the events that had just transpired. The destruction of the outpost and the dark energy experiment had been a necessary action, but the implications of what they had uncovered weighed heavily on them all. As the shuttle docked and the team disembarked, Admiral Grayson Sinclair was waiting for them, his expression unreadable. He greeted San and Hawkins with a curt nod, his eyes betraying a hint of curiosity mixed with concern. "I've been briefed on your mission," Sinclair began, his voice gruff but measured. "You did well out there considering the circumstances, but I need to know exactly what you found." San stepped forward, his posture straight and authoritative. "Admiral, we uncovered evidence of a rogue operation involving both Andromedan and human elements. They were experimenting with dark energy, attempting to create a weapon of unimaginable power, a controlled singularity." Sinclair's eyes widened slightly, but he quickly regained his composure. "And you destroyed it?" he asked, his tone leaving no room for ambiguity. "Yes, sir," Hawkins replied. "We initiated a self-destruct sequence that obliterated the outpost and everything in it. There's no trace left of the experiment." The Admiral nodded, his gaze shifting between San and Hawkins. "Good. That's one less threat to worry about, but we can't afford to be complacent. This kind of operation requires resources and coordination that go beyond a simple rogue faction. We need to find out who's behind this and put an end to their plans before they can regroup." Zara, who had been standing quietly to the side, spoke up. "I managed to recover some data from the outpost before it was destroyed. It's incomplete, but there are hints that this experiment was just one part of a larger network. If we can decrypt the rest of the information, it might lead us to the masterminds." Sinclair's expression darkened. "Do it," he ordered. "I want every scrap of data analyzed. If there are more of these operations out there, we need to know about them." The team dispersed, each member returning to their respective duties with a renewed sense of urgency. San and Hawkins walked together through the Academy's corridors, the weight of their responsibility pressing down on them. "I never imagined things would escalate this quickly," San admitted, his voice heavy with the burden of leadership. "When I came here, I thought the biggest challenge would be adapting to human culture, not uncovering a conspiracy that could threaten the entire galaxy." Hawkins nodded in agreement. "Neither did I. But we can't let this shake us. We've been through worse, and we've come out stronger each time. We'll handle this, just like we've handled everything else." San appreciated Hawkins's confidence, but he couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning of something far more dangerous. The destruction of the outpost had been a victory, but it was a hollow one, knowing that there were likely more threats lurking in the shadows. As they reached the Academy's command center, they found Zara already hard at work, her eyes fixed on the screens in front of her. The data she had recovered was fragmented and encrypted, but her determination to crack the code was unwavering. San watched her for a moment before speaking. "Zara, do you think we'll be able to find out who's behind this?" Zara's fingers paused briefly over the keyboard, her gaze distant as she considered the question. "I don't know," she admitted. "But I do know that if we don't try, we'll never have a chance to stop them. We have to keep pushing, keep searching until we find the truth." Hawkins placed a hand on Zara's shoulder, offering her a reassuring smile. "You're right. We've come too far to stop now." The command center was quiet, save for the soft hum of the computers and the occasional beep of an incoming transmission. The Academy, once a place of learning and training, had become the epicenter of a galactic investigation that could change the course of history. San, Hawkins, and Zara knew that their journey was far from over. The dark energy experiment was only a small piece of a much larger puzzle, and they were determined to uncover every last piece, no matter the cost. As they continued their work, the stars outside the Academy's windows twinkled like distant beacons, each one a reminder of the vastness of the galaxy and the unknown dangers that lay within. The team was resolute in their mission, but they knew that the road ahead would be fraught with challenges. And so, they pressed on, their resolve unshaken, their bond stronger than ever. For they knew that in the end, the only way to protect their worlds was to face the darkness head-on and emerge victorious, no matter the odds. The hidden threat revealed weeks had passed since the destruction of the outpost, and the investigation had entered a new phase. Zara's relentless work on decrypting the recovered data had begun to yield results, revealing a web of connections that spanned multiple star systems. The team had uncovered a vast network of rogue elements, mercenaries, scientists, and even government officials, all working together towards a common goal, harnessing the power of dark energy for their own ends. The implications were staggering. The network was more extensive and better organized than anyone had anticipated, with resources that rivaled those of the most powerful governments in the galaxy. And at the center of it all was a shadowy figure known only as the Architect. The Architect had been the mastermind behind the dark energy experiment, orchestrating every move from the shadows. Little was known about this mysterious figure, but what was clear was that they possessed a deep understanding of both Andromedan and human technology, as well as the political landscape of the galaxy. San, Hawkins, and Zara convened in the Academy's war room, a secure chamber lined with holographic displays that projected maps, star charts, and intelligence reports. The atmosphere was tense, the weight of their discoveries hanging heavily in the air. "This is bigger than we ever imagined," San said, his voice low and serious. "The Architect has been pulling the strings for years, manipulating events to suit their agenda, and we're only just beginning to see the full scope of their operation." Hawkins crossed his arms, his expression grim. "They've been playing us all, pitting Andromedan against human, sowing discord and mistrust. And all the while, they've been building their power base, ready to strike when the time is right." Zara tapped a few commands into her console, bringing up a detailed map of the galaxy. Red markers indicated known locations where the rogue network had been active, each one a potential target for further investigation. We've identified several key nodes in the network, she explained. If we can take them out, we might be able to disrupt their operations and force the architect to reveal themselves. San studied the map, his mind racing as he formulated a plan. We'll need to coordinate with both the Andromedan Empire and Earth's government, he said. This isn't something we can handle on our own. We need to unite our forces and strike hard before the architect can unleash whatever they're planning next. Hawkins nodded in agreement. I'll reach out to my contacts in the Earth Defense Force. They'll want to be involved in this, especially after what we found at the outpost. We'll need to present a united front if we're going to take down this network. Zara's eyes flickered with determination as she locked onto a particular red marker on the map. This is our best lead, she said, pointing to a location deep within Andromedan space. It's a research facility, heavily guarded and isolated from any major trade routes. If the architect is hiding anywhere, it's here. San and Hawkins exchanged a glance, their resolve clear. This was it, their chance to bring down the architect and put an end to the threat that had been looming over them for so long. Then that's where we'll go, San declared. We'll gather our forces and hit them with everything we've got. We can't afford to let this opportunity slip away. The plan was set in motion. Over the next few days, the team worked tirelessly to coordinate the assault, bringing together the best and brightest from both the Andromedan Empire and Earth. The Joint Task Force was a symbol of the cooperation that had been forged through adversity, a testament to the strength of their alliance. As the fleet assembled in orbit around the Academy, San couldn't help but feel a sense of pride in what they had accomplished. They had come a long way from the early days of distrust and rivalry, and now they stood together, ready to face a common enemy. The final briefing took place aboard the flagship, a massive Andromedan warship outfitted with the latest in both Andromedan and human technology. The war room was filled with officers and strategists from both species, all of them focused on the task at hand. Zara led the briefing, her voice clear and confident as she outlined the mission. Our primary objective is to secure the research facility and capture the architect. We believe they're using the facility to develop a new generation of dark energy weapons, possibly even more powerful than the singularity we encountered at the outpost. She paused, letting the gravity of the situation sink in. This is a high-risk operation, but it's our best chance to stop the architect before they can unleash their plans on the galaxy. We've prepared for every possible contingency, but we'll need to stay sharp and work together if we're going to succeed. San looked around the room, taking in the determined faces of his comrades. We've been through a lot to get to this point, he said, his voice filled with conviction. But we've proven time and again that when we stand together, there's nothing we can't overcome. Let's go out there and finish what we started. The fleet jumped into hyperspace, the stars stretching into lines of light as they made their way towards the research facility. The journey was tense, the anticipation building as they drew closer to their target. When they finally emerged from hyperspace, the facility loomed before them, a dark silhouette against the backdrop of a distant star. The fleet moved into position, surrounding the facility and cutting off any possible escape routes. "Commence the assault," San ordered, his voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through his veins. The battle that followed was fierce and unrelenting. The facility's defenses were formidable, but the combined might of the Andromedan and human forces proved to be overwhelming. Fighter squadrons weaved through volleys of plasma fire, while capital ships unleashed devastating barrages that tore through enemy ships and installations. San and Hawkins led the ground assault, their team pushing through the facility's corridors with relentless determination. The enemy forces were well-trained and heavily armed, but they were no match for the unity and resolve of the Joint Task Force. As they fought their way deeper into the facility, San couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. The defenses were too strong, too well prepared. It was as if the architect had been expecting them. And then, as they reached the heart of the facility, the truth became clear. The architect had indeed been waiting for them, and the entire facility had been rigged as a trap. With a sudden, blinding flash, the facility's power core overloaded, sending out a shockwave of dark energy that ripped through the structure. San and Hawkins were thrown to the ground, the air crackling with raw, uncontrolled power. Zara's voice came over the comms, filled with urgency. The facility's collapsing. We need to get out of here now.